The Python's Bride, Part 10. Nneka stood at the edge of the forest, her heart pounding as she saw the King of Ukana and his people approaching. The air was thick with tension, and it felt as though even the trees were holding their breath. The Okoji people gathered behind Nneka, watching closely as the king came closer. The king stopped a few steps away, looking tired but determined. Beside him was the queen, her face filled with both sadness and strength. Behind them, the elders of Ukana stood in a line, their faces showing regret and resolve. Nneka stepped forward, speaking firmly, even though she felt a storm of emotions inside. Your Majesty, we have waited a long time for this. Are you ready to return the land that was taken from us many years ago? The king lowered his head. His voice was heavy with the weight of history. I am ready, Nneka. This land belongs to the Okoji people. My ancestors wronged your people, and now it is time to make things right. He turned to his people and ordered, mark the boundary as it once was. The Ukana warriors quickly got to work, clearing away the thick bushes that had grown over the old boundary line. They worked with purpose, knowing that this was the start of a new chapter for both their people and the Okoji. The elders of both sides watched silently, understanding that this moment would be remembered forever. When the boundary was restored, the oracle stepped forward, holding a staff decorated with sacred symbols. He placed the staff firmly in the ground at the boundary line and began to chant words of blessing. The air seemed to hum with power, and as the oracle's voice echoed through the trees, the tension in the forest seemed to fade. When the chanting stopped, the oracle turned to the king. It is done, Your Majesty. There will be peace. The crowd cheered in joy as the king and his people turned to leave. Nneka and the Okoji people gathered around, celebrating their regained land. Meanwhile, Ada and the warriors were still making their way through the dense forest toward Ojadili's domain. It felt as though the forest stretched on forever, and Ada feared that they might arrive too late. Perhaps the princess had already been married to Ojadili. Determined, she pressed on, her heart pounding with every step. Suddenly, airy songs filled the air. The warriors froze, realizing they were close. We're near, one of the warriors whispered. I see creatures dancing around a light. They crept closer, hiding behind the trees as they watched strange beings dancing around a glowing cycle of light. Ojadili was in the center of the cycle, but Princess Ojo was nowhere to be seen. Where is she? Ada asked, worry etched on her face. One of the warriors suggested waiting to see what would happen next. No, we can't wait, Ada insisted. We need to split up and find her before it's too late. As they debated, Ojadili rose from his magical throne. His booming voice echoed through the trees as he ordered his servants to bring his bride to him. Some of the creatures left the cycle to fetch Ojo. Ada and the warriors quietly followed them. Soon, they reached a clearing where Ojo sat on a magical throne, being dressed for the wedding. Though tears streamed down her face, she allowed the creatures to prepare her. One of the warriors stepped forward, creating a distraction. The creatures looked at him strangely, and all of a sudden, he collapsed. Ojo, realizing her people were nearby, stood up and looked around. A creature approached the fallen warrior, but as it touched him, the warrior sprang to life and slashed it with his sword. At that moment, the other warriors attacked the creatures. Ada rushed straight to Ojo. What are you doing? Ojo asked in shock. We're here to save you. Ada replied. No, stop, Ojo cried, her voice trembling. You're putting everyone in danger. Don't you remember what the wise woman told us? No one can escape a spirit. Just then, Ojadili appeared, his face twisted with rage. He hissed, and the force of his breath knocked everyone, including Ojo, to the ground. Furious, Ojadili opened his mouth and sent a stream of fire toward Ada, knowing she was the leader of the group. Ada thought this was the end, but just before the fire reached her, a glowing shield appeared around her, deflecting the flames. Shocked, Ada looked around, wondering what had just happened. Ojadili, too, was stunned. He knew that the shield could only come from the gods. Confused, Ojadili asked himself why the gods would protect a child of Ukana. After all, the gods had allowed him to curse Ukana long ago when the people of Okoji had come to him crying. Why would the gods protect their enemy now? Just then, an old man stepped out from the belly of a tree. It was the same man who had guided Ada and Ojo to Nneka. The old man stood tall, his eyes wise and kind. He introduced himself as the eyes of the gods and told Ojadili, I have been watching over Ada, and the gods sent me to guide her. You cannot harm her or any child of Ukana. Ada and the warriors got to their feet as Ojo rushed to Ada's side. Are you alright? Ojo asked. Yes, I'm fine, Ada replied. They watched in silence as the old man and Ojadili stared at each other. After a long moment, the old man spoke again. Ojadili, the gods have sent me with a message. You must name a price, something that can replace the princess. The gods understand that a covenant with a spirit cannot be broken, but the sacrifice can be shifted to the next generation. Because Ada has been faithful to her mission, and because Ojo has sacrificed so much, the gods are giving you the chance to name a new price. Ojadili grew even angrier. The gods have betrayed me. He roared. When I placed the curse on Ukana, I asked the gods for their permission, and they gave it to me. When Ukana came begging for peace and I demanded their princess, why did the gods not speak then? The old man shook his head. You betrayed the gods first, Ojadili. You did not consult them before making your covenant with Ukana. The gods allowed the curse to see if Ukana would return to them and make things right. But they ran to you instead, and you used them for your own selfish needs. Ojadili recoiled, realizing that the old man spoke the truth. You have 3 days to name your price, the old man said. Until then, Ojo, Ada, and the warriors are free to leave. With that, the old man disappeared back into the tree. Ojadili watched silently as Ojo, Ada, and the warriors walked past him. Furious, he turned and destroyed his palace in a fit of rage. Back in the village, the people of Ukana anxiously waited for news about Ojo, Ada, and the warriors. The king was ready to send more warriors, but the oracle told him to wait. The gods have not spoken yet, the oracle said. By evening, the oracle finally spoke. Tomorrow, by this time, the princess, Ada, and the warriors will return, but this does not mean all is well. The people rejoiced, though they were confused. What could still be wrong, even after the land had been returned and Ojadili had spared the princess? As dawn broke, the people of Ukana gathered with hope and worry. They waited anxiously for Princess Ojo, Ada, and the warriors to return, hoping for good news. Finally, Ada, Ojo, and the warriors emerged from the forest, tired but determined. The villagers cheered and celebrated as they approached the village. King Uzi and Queen Efiru stood at the village square, their faces showing both relief and concern. The king thanked Ada with gratitude in his eyes. You have done what we could only hope for, Ada. The land is restored, and my daughter is safe. Bless you. Ada bowed in respect, but the king embraced her warmly. The queen hugged Ada and Princess Ojo, too. The villagers welcomed them with joy, as drummers played and women sang songs of praise and victory. Just as the celebration was in full swing, the oracle cried out, bringing the jubilant crowd to a halt. It is not yet time for victory, the oracle announced. A great sacrifice will soon be demanded from the people of Ukana. It will be something no one will want to give, but if we refuse, Ojadili will continue his evil plans, and the gods will not be blamed if he conquers us. Our ancestors turned their backs on the gods, and now the gods might turn their backs on us. The oracle's voice was somber. Ojadili has given us 3 days to prepare. His demand will be huge and painful. We must be ready for another sacrifice or a new challenge. These are words from the gods, the oracle said. The villagers looked at each other with fear. The joyful atmosphere had turned to unease. Though they were no longer happy, they still escorted Ada and Ojo to the palace. That night, King Uzi and his advisors had a secret meeting to plan their next steps. They knew the gods' message was both a blessing and a warning. They could not ignore the gods' warning as their ancestors had. The king asked the oracle what they should do. I do not know, the oracle replied. The gods have not given further instructions yet. The room fell silent with sadness. Meanwhile, Ojadili remained in his broken palace, feeling betrayed and angry. He knew that whatever price he demanded, it would have to be significant to restore his honor and satisfy his thirst for revenge. As the days passed, the villagers waited anxiously. They knew Ojadili's next decision could decide their fate. The oracle continued to offer reassurance, though he was also unsure of what the gods would decide. On the 3rd day, early in the morning, the oracle visited the palace and told King Uzi to gather the people of Ukana, as Ojadili had sent a messenger. Watch out for part 11.